Hey everybody, I'm Corey, and thanks for joining me. Today we're gonna do some reading through of some Rust code and some comments. But first, I'm Corey, thanks for joining, and this is my website, CoreyJA.com, if you want to follow along. Just last week I started a newsletter. You can find out about it here on the newsletter page, and you can see the first article that came out a few days ago on Friday down here. And if you want to sign up for the newsletter, head down to the bottom, enter your email address, and you'll get updates every Friday, one day before they are posted on my blog. And so yeah, let's chat about what we're going to be looking at today. Earlier this week, I found this PR floating around the Rust internet. And so it's on a kind of a side project, a toy project by a non-rig, Yagi's Nisipli, a Node.js core contributor and OpenJS Foundation member. So I don't know a non-rig too much from the internets, but I know Steve Klabnick, or I've followed them on Twitter in the past, and they're a Rustacean and were involved in Rust in the early days. And so they found this project that a non-rig was learning Rust and playing around with some stuff, and have a PR where they have, well, let's see, 23 here commits that go through different refactors of the repo and explain why. So like this first one, you know, has a nice message of what's going on and why the refactor happened. So I think we're gonna just look through this code and codebase and walk through this PR and see what we see. We're gonna chat about some of the different Rust stuff and have a fun time. That's the plan for today. Hey, Backward Spy, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. We are just getting this PR pulled up. So yeah, let's see. I'm not sure. I'm gonna do a little bit of just looking at the repo first before we dive into the code. And so this is called Packet. We're gonna go with Packet. And it's a package manager for Node.js written in Rust. So I think it's basically like an NPM or a yarn replacement kind of thing. And this is mostly a playground to learn Rust and understand how package managers work. So, you know, this goal isn't to necessarily be the next big package manager, just to play around and learn, which is perfect for what we're trying to do here on the stream. Hey, Opus Bopus, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. You did not miss it at all, Backward Spy. We are just getting started. I'm a little, you know, later than some days on a Sunday, but worked out perfectly. So yeah, so this is the repo we're gonna look at, and I don't think we're gonna dive into it too much before just taking a look at the PR. If we need context, we'll always pull up some other files. And actually, I might just go ahead and clone this repo locally. Oh, ignore all of this stuff that I was working on before. Let's open up a new window. Well, yeah, let's just work on the CoreyJA.com thing. Okay. Git clone. Okay, so now we got a local clone if we want to pull it up there. Perfect. I can close this one. This one will be the window. Awesome. Okay, so if we need code, we've got code. That means we can also run code, which is awesome. Let's actually do that here. Cargo build. Let's at least just get it a building. Oh, it wants to be on nightly. Okay, cool. Uh-oh. Hope I'm not out of disk space. That was something that I was supposed to check before I started stream, and I did not. So sorry, stream, give me 30 seconds. We're gonna go into secrets mode, and I'm gonna see if I can quickly delete some stuff that I don't need to have around anymore that might be taking up some space. Okay, do I have an easy choice for that anywhere? Actually not sure I have easy place I know of to delete. So I've been doing some video editing and trying to make some help people produce some podcasts, which is really fun. But it means I've got some huge video files roaming around my hard drive, and I think they might be using up all. Oh no, free 200 and no, I've got a lot of free space right now. I just freed up a ton recently. Okay, so let's just assume cargo was confused, and if we try again, maybe things will be better. And if like I can't get cargo to build, it's not the end of the world. I didn't really. Yeah, okay, something was just silly. We aren't running out of hard drive space. I am still in need of thinking about that, but not right now. Opus Bopus, what are you finally doing some front-end stuff using Bootstrap for MVP because spending 2 months on a design system and learning CSS is not the ideal plan currently? No, that's pretty fair. Definitely use, you know, if that's not what you're familiar with, don't go crazy. Bootstrap sounds great. Wonder what Bootstrap. I haven't checked out Bootstrap in a while, just because I haven't. But I bet, you know, it's gotten better since I checked it out, and I always liked Bootstrap. It was never bad, and especially if your goal is to not mess with things too much, I think Bootstrap's perfect. I've had problems with Bootstrap when we had Bootstrap layered in, but then the goal was like to completely not make it look like Bootstrap, and that was annoying. That was probably not necessary. But if you just want to use it because it makes your site look reasonable and fast to ship, then by all means. I love it. What are you building a front end for, Opus Bopus? Anything specific or just messing around? Oh, Bulma. Yeah, so we actually do have Bulma at work, but it's again something that is more legacy at this point, and we're moving away from. Yeah, that is interesting that they don't have a native dark mode. I kind of would have assumed they would. And I do agree. Like, you know, you gotta have the, well, if you're gonna have, well, I don't even have a theme on my blog yet. I don't have light mode support. It's only dark, but it'll come soon, and it will definitely support the native OS choice. I agree. I had forgotten about Bulma. Bulma's a good choice too, but Bulma is a little bit more, I don't remember, but you correct me if I'm wrong. I thought Bulma was a little bit more, you pick components rather than a whole drop-in, like, almost theme like Bootstrap is sometimes. But maybe they're more similar. It's been a while since I looked at either. Okay. Yes, let's just jump into this PR. So Steve Klabnick is our Rustation who is going to be giving us this tour today. And so I liked this first note, so I'm just going to read it here. The very first thing I want to say is this code is already really great. If you were some random beginner who asked me to look at their code, I'd say great job and not offer any of this feedback unless they were actively looking to level up at Rust. And while we don't know each other that well, I do know you're an experienced systems programmer and looking to level up your Rust. So I went a little extra. Sorry, not sorry. Each of these commits tells a story, in order. I left detailed commit messages. Some code gets rewritten multiple times, but at each step should be instructive. So if you only look at the final diff, you won't learn everything. Please take what you want and throw away what you don't. I'm happy to discuss anything about any of this in detail. This looks like a fun project. So yeah, we're going to dig in. We're going to do exactly what Steve recommends, and we're going to go commit by commit, talk through the changes, and see what we learn. There's a chance we might not get some of the big picture stuff going commit by commit without knowing the prior code base, but we're going to see. We can always pull up the code and explore more if we need to. So let's jump right in. And I have not, just as a like disclaimer kind of thing, I haven't read past the first commit. I purposely didn't want to read too far ahead because I thought it would be fun for me to do this more live. But I did read the first commit before I had this idea for stream. So this first commit, let's just look at the diff first, and then we'll read the explanation, I think. So there's this new method on a registry manager, and it takes something called path, and it's a type P, where it used to implement as ref of a path, so something that could be referenced as a path. And then to use it, we did path.asRef, so we used the asRef, and then we to-owned it. Okay, so this is going to do an allocation here, right? Because we're going to get a reference to it, and then to-owned it, so like clone it, kind of, to get us to the owned version of a path. And I think I know this little bit, but it says it in here. And maybe it doesn't say it in this, it said it somewhere else. I think what's interesting here potentially is that path buff is the owned type and path is the referencing type here. And for some reason that took me a little while to figure out in Rust, the buffer type, which makes sense, right? You have to hold the path in a buffer, like that's the thing you own. But for some reason that took me a little while. So the change here is to say that we want something that you can turn into a path buff, where path buff is this owned type. So taking a reference to a path and calling as ref2owned is probably what the into path buff is going to do in this case. But this makes it a little more generic over the right things, I think. But let's see what Steve says. Steve's going to have a better explanation. Previously, this code said, hey, I will take anything that can be converted into a reference to a path. And now it says, hey, I can take anything that can be turned into a path buff. The former is not wrong, but it's a bit roundabout. You want to store a path buff because that's the owned data that you want to store. Just take anything that can be turned into a path buff. So basically, just be more direct, right? We want to store a path buff, just take anything in. Not only is this a little simpler, but it can also save you an allocation, at least conceptually. I don't know if Rust is smart enough to remove the allocation in a code like this. So if you have a path buff and the only thing you do is take a reference to it in this new, in theory, Rust could be smart enough and say, oh, the only time you use this path is this reference. We can just actually pass the owned path buff down as an optimization. It might still convert the path buff into a reference to a path and then recreate the whole path buff by allocating. In the new way, we could also leave off the reference and just path the whole path in, because a path buff, man, these words are going to sound really weird as the more I keep saying them, but a path buff implements into path buff. You can just return yourself. You can just return a self in it, and it's an easy into. This way, instead, we'll take the same stuff, but we'll already have a path buff. We can skip the round trip through the pointer. In other words, you can just pass path in the above code where you couldn't with the original version. And I assume that's... oh, we don't actually change any usages here, which is kind of cool about this refactor, right? Every code that was here will still be here. Okay, so I'm probably going to go commit by commit, and then I'll take a chat break. So, chat break. Making it so Opus Bopus talking about his front end stuff. Making it for a product which will eventually fully replace most Twitch Discord bots for streamers. Having done moderation management for a large streamer now, the tooling is such a mess. So he has to have like 3 Twitch bots and 7 Discord bots because of there's integration issues, and not to mention having to learn so many different things to get what I consider basic functionality. There are a lot of basic things that could be added to existing features of these bots would prove so much more convenience as well. You have to make an outline, document, like a few documents, whatever for it, especially since I've gotten quite a lot of the feature requests from streamers interested. Yeah, that sounds awesome. That sounds like a really cool tool. I definitely would like a unified bot thing. I've plugged a few into my Discord for, like, you know, when I post on when I do a it comes in. I think I have an RSS one for videos at least. But, you know, having one of those would be ideal. And I've always said that I'm going to just build it myself into my blog engine. And I already have some Discord code in there. But I actually haven't added any of those there yet. So, you know. But I like the idea of having one that's just all everything. Uh-oh. Which XKCD is this? I'm terrified. Ah, standards. Had to be standards. What a good one. It was a good XKCD like backwards by. It was pretty perfect. But I do agree, it's a good idea as well. But hey, if you can come up with a new standard that replaces 8 or 9 other standards, I'll take it any day. Awesome. Okay, so I like this commit, right? And I like how it's explained here, right? It's previously the code says I'll take anything that can be converted into a reference to a path. Now it says I'll take anything that can be converted into a path buff. And since we're storing a path buff, that's just kind of the better semantics of what we want. So I like that. Can I? Oh yes, I can just go to the next commit. Nice. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. This one's an interesting one, and I like know the rule, but I don't know if I know the why too much. So here we're saying we're gonna prefer reference to str lowercase over reference to capital string as a parameter. And so Steve says the only thing reference to capital string can meaningfully do over reference to str is examine the capacity of the underlying string, and you aren't doing that. This signature is more general and more idiomatic. So I know that I never write this, and I never see this in Rust code, so I knew that it wasn't idiomatic, but I don't think I knew about this difference, which is really, I like this a lot. It's good to know what the one meaningful difference is. And so I'm probably going to butcher this explanation, but here's as good as what I've got. So at str is a reference to, so this string in source code is not actually ever a capital string because it's the actual characters are embedded in the source code, and it's neither on the heap or the stack. Oh man, I hope someone who's watching can correct me when I absolutely lie, but I'm pretty sure that's kind of the case, right? You can only reference this in source code. If you need to do operations on it and like have it in memory that the code can access, nah, that's not really access, it can mutate, how about that? Where the code can mutate, you need to make it into a capital string and move it to the heap. But so this in source code is a reference to a lowercase str. And so in this signature here, you actually couldn't pass a hard-coded string name to get package, because a hard-coded string is not a reference to capital string, it's a reference to lowercase str. But something that is a string or a reference to a string can also be referenced as a reference to a lowercase str. This one's confusing. I'm not sure I'm gonna I think I can come back and give a better explanation sometime for this. Like I could make a whole little 5-minute video or something about string versus str. I don't even know what to call this thing. That's the other problem. But the advice I agree with, and I understand enough of to understand that it's good advice, is to always basically accept at string. You can then you could accept things that either are a full string or a reference to a string, no matter where it comes from, source code, a reference to somewhere else. So it's the most general, right? Yep, this signature is more general. And so chat break. Opus Bopus says, yeah, I've spent a lot of time thinking about how I can make it back and wise, and I've finally decided on Rust, ScalaDB, and Postgres. I initially decided on Kotlin because I've run that in production with tens of thousands of users, so I know what to expect, but how else am I going to learn with Rust other than to make mistakes? Also, I just love Rust. I do it for my job, but that's game dev. Yeah, no, I love that. That's a good stack. I like that a lot. Well, not except. I don't know much about ScalaDB? What is ScalaDB in this stack? Is it a layer on top of Postgres, or is it a different data store? Because if I was using Postgres, I would, you know, I make Postgres do everything. I use it as a queue, I use it as a cache. I love Postgres. And I agree on using Rust just because it's fun, right? That's what I did for my blog. Sometimes you just got to do it. It's more fun. You got to learn. It's a great time. So I've heard, I think I'd heard of both Scylla and Cassandra, but I couldn't tell you what they are or give a use case for them. So like, what are you going to use them for? Like, what's your use case for them over Postgres? Just curious. I'm gonna click to the next commit, but take your time, Opus Bopus. Okay. Okay, so this is around the same thing. So this is about strings, but from the other direction. So here, now we're looking at inside the get package function. When we're calling the from registry, before we were doing, I think URL here, and I could probably pull this up, but I'd have to pull up the old commit. Which I could probably do. It's okay. I bet URL here is a capital. Oh yes, because I see the two owned here. Cool. So URL is going to be a string. We're going to take this source code at str reference, make it two owned, make it a string, and then add this reference to a string to it. So this is going to be an owned capital string. And before we were using as str to make it into a reference to an str. And so the change here is just to do reference to URL instead. And so this code works via a feature called Dref Coercion. Basically, if t implements dref target equals u, and x is a value of type t, then reference to t is coerced into reference to u. So if it implements dref and sets up this specific associated type target, you can do this. This means you can pass an @string to a function expecting a @str, and it will just work because string implements dref. And so this is the key here, right? String implements this trait dref and has the target of str. So that means you can go from a reference to a string to a reference to an str. This is also why the previous commit works and is more general. Maybe I should have said this before. So yeah, these two commits definitely go together, right? The reason that we could change the old signature from an @string to a string is because @string dereferences to string. Like I'm not saying the right words there. I know. I'm sorry. But I hope we're following along. And if we're not, please let me know in chat. Or if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, let me know through any other method. Hit me up in the metaverse, or find my Discord, or send me an email if you find my email. Whatever. So yeah, I think this one makes sense too, right? We're gonna prefer to use the dref coercion over the as str method. Just makes it a little more idiomatic, saves some characters. But I don't think it's that different here, right? It's doing the same thing. Awesome. Yeah, okay, so cool. I thought this was a little weird, but I just didn't know. So I like that this refactor touches on something that I was curious about. So using format strings. Apparently they're a relatively new addition to Rust, which is interesting. I think they've been in Rust for, well, the ones with the name in them are newer. But I've done the format bang macro has been there since, I think, as long as I've done Rust, but I have no idea how long that has been the case. Okay. I see your message, Opus. I'll get through this commit. So instead of doing a string plus name, Steve is recommending the format bang macro. I like the format bang macro too, especially with the addition of being able to put the name of the thing inside the brackets. The older style is to do something more like this, where you do an open close bracket immediately, and then you give it the parameters here. The newer style is just a newer thing in Rust, so if you have a recent Rust, just go ahead and use this style if you prefer, which I think you should. It's nice. And so instead of doing the plus name, we just do the format string here. And I think we're gonna be saving an allocation here, but it's not a big, or it might not be the biggest deal, but I think that's what's gonna happen. Also, when creating a string from a string literal, standard style is to use toString, and there's a pretty significant minority style which I personally prefer to use string from, but given that we're doing concatenation, this is what I would personally consider idiomatic post Rust 158. Okay, so there's like, this is kind of a diversion from the using format strings. But Steve's saying the standard style, and actually this is something I should pick up because I don't always be consistent, but maybe I'll just try to always use toString here. Instead of calling toOwned on a string literal, there we go. That's what I need to call these, a string literal. Instead of calling toOwned works. You get a capital string back. Everything's great. But calling toString is just slightly more idiomatic. Or you can do string from, which some people like as well. Probably gonna start with toString. I like the dot instead of the from method, I think. Not a huge deal. But I definitely like the format over the string concatenation addition. I would definitely have used format here as well. Okay, cool. This is a comment about kind of the last one about preferring Dref Coercion over as string, and asking if there's a clippy rule, and Steve does not think so at the moment. But isn't she? Okay. Chat break. What's up, Opus? I'm using Scalia especially for storing messages of users from all platforms. My main idea for it being able to have two streamers share data between each other and mod teams, so mods of streamer A could see why A is banned of streamer B, yep, and make a judgment call themselves. I'm using Scalia over Postgres for this since it's basically what Scalia is meant for, and there could be a lot of ingests, so I don't want to hurt Postgres. Discord actually uses Scalia for storing messages if I remember correctly. I'll probably eventually store detailed moderation logs in Scalia as well, just because I can, even though Postgres is definitely fine for that. Oh, that's interesting. So what would you? So then, I'm kind of curious why you want to have both Scalia and Postgres. Is there something that you think Scalia isn't good for, or isn't good for, that you definitely want to stuff in Postgres? Like, what wouldn't you want to put in ScalaDB? Because it doesn't sound like, my first thought was maybe it was more like a Redis. Like, I use Redis for cachy temporal stuff that I don't want to say, like, that I don't need to have permanent state for, right? And I thought maybe it was something like that, but I'm now curious what you want to put in Postgres over ScalaDB, if that's okay. If I can keep poking you with questions here, I hope you don't mind. If you do, just ignore me or tell me to stop. And then the only other thing I was gonna say is that I do think Postgres. I got a cat in front of me. I'm not sure if you guys can see. I do think Postgres can probably handle it. Postgres scales really, really well. I've used it as a job queue where, like, you know, we poll every second for seeing if there's jobs available, and you insert from many different web requests, and which is typically something that lots of people would use a Redis or something like that for. But I've done it in Postgres at multiple different places, and it scales way better than most people expect. Obviously, there's gotchas like everything, but Postgres can handle large amounts of ingest if you want it to. But not trying to convince you to use Postgres, just chat. I am a big fan of using Postgres for everything though when I use it, because I like having fewer pieces in general, so one data store usually is nice, if possible. Okay, cool, so format strings. I like format strings. Ooh, okay. Partially address, I don't know what this is. TOCG. Oh, time of check to time of use is a race condition involved using the checking of state and the use of the result of that check. Got it. So we check if you have access, and then you open it and write to it. I think what they're saying is, yeah, you can do something in the middle. And then bad things happen. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Time of check versus time of use. Interesting. Oh, nice. We got a few people hanging out today. How's it going, everyone? Thanks for coming. I hope you're enjoying. Let me know if anything is confusing while we keep walking through this PR. Okay, so let's actually, I want to look at the diff a little bit here. Oh, it's actually a little bit, oh, okay, this does make sense. When I'm just going to read through it now because I think I understand the gist. When working with file systems, especially code that vaguely looks like this, if file A doesn't exist, do something to create file. There's a bug of varying degrees of severity called time of check to time of use, and the problem is roughly that something can happen in the middle. So if you check, and then what happens if we get here, but before we call this function, we swap to another thread, and another process creates a file, possibly by doing something fancy with symlinks. So, you know, what if the file does exist and there's crazy stuff going on? And we don't, Steve doesn't think there's actually a problem in this code with the create dir calls, but it's probably better just to confidently call these functions rather than try and get fancy. That way the creation is atomic, if you will. Now the commit line says partially, wait. Now the commit line says partially. Oh, it says partially because if the extract destination doesn't exist, let download and extract. This is doing the same thing, but modifying all of that code to also be okay with being called this way as a larger lift, and you don't have any tests, so I am nervous about breaking something. Okay, gotcha. So the changes here, right, where we say instead of checking if this folder exists and then making it if it doesn't, we just say create all of the directories and give it the path to this, and we do the same thing for the node modules. But we don't do that for this last if, where there's still a time to check and time to use bug potentially waiting. And the reason is just that it was a bigger refactor, and without tests, we didn't want to do that here. Cool. There was something else I wanted to say about this here. Oh yeah. I think I saw this in top level comments, but I'll mention it now. The difference between create dir and create dir all here is the same as doing make dir with the -p, I think is the bash thing for it. Basically, it'll make directories and subdirectories. So if you want to make like in your home directory, you want to make projects and then my project, cool name, and like all of those as different paths. With make dir, if you just did that and didn't have any of the leading directories, it would fail and not make the full one. And that's what create dir does here. So if it doesn't have the first directories, it won't make them so that it can make the subdirectories. But create dir all it just does it. Like if you need to make 4 directories of empty, to put more directories in, it's fine with that. So I like the all version better. I almost always use make dir -p in bash because I just don't. It's almost always what I actually want. Okay, Opus Popus, back to you. Scala can be used for ephemeral cache as well. You could theoretically use Scala for everything I would need, but things like migration tools already made, relationships and whatnot is nice, especially with SQLX and Rust having compile time checked queries. Fair enough. Good. Tooling is a very fair reason to be using something. I'll give you that. And I do love SQLX and the compile time checked queries. I really do like them. I have like the only thing I don't love about them is then like the whole offline. I don't always like having a database when I compile my code, and then you have to compile that like offline JSON file, and it all works great, and the tooling is like pretty good for it, so I don't actually run into issues. But conceptually, it's just a whole feels a little weird. But I don't think there's a way around it for having typed check SQL code, so I think I'll take the trade-offs. Cool. This commit looks awesome. Sounds good. Backwards spy. We will be here when you get back. And I'll make sure to upload this so you can rewind if you need to. Have a good dinner. Okay, let's move on to the next commit here. Cool. Okay, so using Unwrap. Okay, so in this method, I'm just going to go to the thing first because I think I know the gist. In this get package, we're already returning a result of an empty tuple or a registry error. So if we succeed, we don't return anything really. We just get an empty tuple that says, hey, we didn't fail, awesome. Or we get a registry error if we do fail. But in this method, there was an unwrap hanging out here. And so the commit here changes the unwrap to a question mark to propagate the error up. And to make that work, yeah, backwards spy will catch the VOD. Perfect. Okay, so to make that work, right, if you just added the question mark and not anything else, you'd get an error that the IO error from standard IO about the directory not existing, I think is what you'd get here, or something. I'm not actually sure what that error would say. Doesn't can't be converted into a registry error. And registry error is this defined enum up here of all the things that could be wrong. And so what Steve does here is just adds a new variant to this enum, a new variant called current directory that has the string of the directory we tried to use. and its error message it says fetching current directory failed, and then prints out the string. And this is using the this error derive. So we add the error message and the variant to the enum, and then the last thing we need to do here is we need to implement we need to be able to convert from our standard IO error into a registry error. So we say we can go from a standard IO error, and we implement the trait from, saying we can go from an IO error to a registry error. And to do that, we just take that new variant and put the value of the standard error inside of it. So the value to string here actually might give you the full error message from the standard IO error. I thought this was going to be just the current directory, but I think it's actually the full error message, which is even better. So we just take that variant, add the other error message inside of it, and now our registry error knows about the current directory fetching failed. And we can forward it up with question mark now and not have to unwrap. And the big reason that that's good is because if we unwrap and there's an error here, the whole thing panics. And if we do the question mark, it just means that the calling function will get the error returned to it through the result. So it can be handled better by the caller without having to like try to catch panics and do unwind stuff. That's not as nice. So yeah, and then let's read what Steve wrote. Remove and unwrap. You're already returning result, best to not panic. I decided to try and keep this in the same style you currently have, with the string living inside the error type. But you could also just attach the whole IO error in there too. Cool. I was thinking about this. I was wondering if there was a reason to keep the string inside instead of the whole error. And it looks like it's just because that was the style of these other ones. Also, I didn't make this change in this diff because it's up to you, but I would not be making a new module for the error. I would put it in lib.rs. You're not really buying anything for moving it in there, just making yourself import it when you don't have to. Up to you though. Okay, so this is just, maybe don't need a whole file for it, especially because I think this 23 lines is the whole file. But not a huge deal. And this file is also only 46 lines, so not crazy long either. But just a reorg suggestion. Cool, I like this. And then the only thing I'll add is I do think there are some other, I think this error has it too. I use might usually, which is very, oh wait, no, it works with this error. This error is for the lib kind of stuff. But sorry, anyways, I think you can probably add a from, oh no, because since we're storing the string, you probably can't do a from. I think if you stored the actual standard IO error here instead of the string, you could add a little from attribute before it. That would automatically create this for you based on the variant. But since we're storing the string, that makes that hard. So I don't think it could do the from for us magically. Are we still good? My iPad reconnected to chat, but it looks like we are still good. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, let's keep going. We removed it on Unwrap. Love that. Sorry, now I'm getting things in my way on my iPad. Perfect. Okay. Cool. We're just doing some more unwrapping. Remove the unwrap in from registry. You were even mapping these to result only to call unwrap on them. Oh, okay. So like we already made all of the work to make them results and then just called await. So where's the actual await call? From registry. Oh, I see. So from registry now returns a result when it used to panic. That makes sense. So there's unwraps here. Yeah, okay. So this await is for the HTTP client. I'm not sure which one we're using, but it's not super relevant here. And when we get it back, it returns a result or maybe an option. Might be an option, but it doesn't really matter. It returns a type that we were then using, or to convert it to an error of registry error. But then we were just unwrapping it. So we were saying, okay, I made this whole nice result with the error type, but then panic anyways. But what we should say instead, and what this diff says is, I'll give you the result of a package or a registry error, and then we can just use question mark here to forward these up instead of unwrapping. And it looks like we don't need one. We don't need a question mark on this last one because we don't want to unwrap the result. We just want to return the whole result to the caller. So then what we need to do here is now the caller of from registry needs to also handle the error. Luckily, though, its only caller can already handle the result and can just add the question mark to forward it up to its caller, which already was expecting a registry error, so there's no additional work needed, which is pretty nice. Nice. Okay. Hopping right along. Ooh, cool. More unwraps that we can just snap away, it looks like. So let's see. Let's see it. We've got a... Cool. Yep. So I wanted to look at the definitions of the functions first to see the signatures changing, and then we'll watch the unwraps bubble up away, basically. So get latest tag was doing the same thing. We even made the registry error, and then we just didn't, or then we unwrapped. So we panicked instead. Now we return a result. And I think it's really just removing the unwrap at the end. That's the only change here. Yep. Nice. Some white space and removing the or. Oh wait, this one's interesting. Oh no, there it is. Awesome. This one's a little more interesting. This one just calls get latest version, which is this method. So it uses the question mark to return its error, forward it up early, and then wraps the whole thing in OK. These other ones returned a result from the OK or, so they didn't need to wrap in OK. Hopefully I'm making sense and not just babbling. But yeah, so these definitions, the function definitions changes aren't too bad, and then the usages are even easier. They all just get some question marks thrown on them. And then, yeah, including, since we made the IO error have the from, since we made the IO error have the from, we can use question mark here because create dir all is going to return that same standard IO error. And I think one thing that's slightly interesting here, though, is that if we go back a commit or two, we wrote the error message here to say that fetching the current directory failed, and the error variant here is current directory. But since we wrote the from standard IO error, if we just use the question mark kind of indiscriminately when we're returning a registry error, we'll take any IO error and turn it into a current directory error in this current form, which I think might be happening in these two by chance. I think now if this were to fail, this create dir all, the variant of the returned error would actually be that current directory error, and it would have the error message about creating the current directory failed, and then the error message string that's contained inside of it would probably reference this package folder, and it could just be a little confusing. So just something to be aware of with your froms is like they're great, and you definitely want to add them when it makes it convenient, so you can just throw a question mark there, but you do want to be a bit careful to make sure that it's picking the from you expect, right? And you didn't make it a really specific variant with a kind of general from, which is a little bit, I think, what's happening here, right? The IO error is kind of a general error, but that from stuff puts it in a very specific variant about the current directory being wrong. So maybe that from should pick a more general variant. Maybe there's just an IO error variant that's just like something went wrong. And if we know it's about the current directory, we could do something specific and not use that from implementation maybe. So just different trade-offs there. It's things to think about. But yeah, cool. Getting rid of all of the unwraps. Love it. No one likes unwraps in their Rust code. No one wants those panics. Oh, cool. There was a main function in, oh, yeah, so lib.rs doesn't have main. Mains go in main.rs. So this was just an unused function. It looks like it was, just added as, and probably tested out and then just never got deleted. Ooh, okay, awesome. So this is switching, and I think this is actually what I was thinking maybe with the froms and the hows. So let's talk about this a bit. So we're gonna switch from this error to anyhow. And And the message says, as your application grows, I think you'll come to appreciate anyhow. A common suggestion is this error is for libraries, anyhow is for applications. And so we're following that. You're effectively putting main in the library, which isn't bad, but that's why this is not strictly following the letter of advice, but instead the spirit. Yeah. I want to explain this just a little bit because I think it's worth doing. So we are writing this code technically in a library, and I bet if I look at the code locally, we can see that. Oh, cool. Yeah, this one. If we look at this, which is actually has a way bigger cargo file already than I thought, which is awesome. Yeah, so you can see that it has a binary and it's pointing to source.main, but it also has a lib. That's just separating the concerns so that the binary can stay really thin and we can put the lib in the lib. But I agree with Steve that this whole crate, this whole CLI crate, is basically an executable. Even though we're technically putting the code in a lib and it is a library that can be consumed, it functions as the application, right? The difference between lib and main isn't the difference between a library and an application as far as this advice is concerned. And that the advice comes from, this error is really good for forwarding specific errors to your caller. Like, I failed because of A, and then the caller can handle A specifically, and, you know, B, C, D, E, you know, all enumerated, you know, every error case and know how to deal with it. Anyhow is more, something failed and I maybe want to report on it, and that's it. So like, anyhow's perfect for applications, right? Where usually your underlying libraries might fail, you might get a IO error in the file system, you might get a 500 in an HTTP request that you decide is an error, things like that. And you know, in my web apps and stuff like that, what you might want to do is just report it to some error reporting, but basically that's it, right? We're not going to try to operate on it and fix the error. Sometimes you'll want to, and you can, and anyhow, it's not impossible. I don't usually do it just because, you know, when I'm using anyhow, that's not usually what I'm looking for. So yeah, this error is for when you want to be really specific and forward the exact thing that your caller can handle. Anyhow's more for, oh, this failed, we're just going to report on it kind of errors. So .context will give you output that looks like this. I think this is talking about an anyhow error. So if you call context on an anyhow error, you'll get something like this. Error, current directory should not exist, caused by, and then the list of errors here. I also tweaked the error message given that it not existing is the only issue. For example, maybe the problem is permissions, in which case the error would look like this. Error, the current directory should exist, caused by permission denied, which is a wrong. So as of this commit, it will stay and said, problem fetching current directory, caused by permission denied, or problem fetching current directory, caused by no such file or directory. The other two messages are already pretty good, I'd say. So this is kind of going with what I was talking about before a bit, I think. Oh, these... Wait a sec, didn't we just... Creates... I just want to look at a commit back. I thought we already did this on this commit. Yeah, we already... Okay, that's interesting. These got a little out of order. So maybe we didn't... I think something got a little messed up in commit rebasing and stuff, which is fine. But these creator alls they got question marked here, which was going to make them be the current directory error like I mentioned, but that's actually going to get fixed in this commit here when we switch to anyhow. And this diff's perfect, so we actually want to read this diff. Oh, this is actually creator. This isn't the creator all calls. This is a different call. Okay, it just looked similar. Interesting. Okay. So we're going to use anyhow. And one of the cool things you can do with anyhow is the context. Yeah, so when you call context, this is the context that you're giving anyhow, and this is the underlying errors. And there might be more of them, I believe. You can have a chain of them. So what the diff looks like here is, actually, let's scroll up, I'm sorry. Lock, I don't care about. We add clap with the derive feature. We'll see what happens with that. And we add anyhow at a specific version, and we tell the CLI to use it. I do like these workspace versions. It allows you to have multiple crates and have them all have the same versions of things. I like that this one's just like went all out. Everything seems to be a workspace, um, for the most part, which I like a lot actually. But back to the main things here. So now, run commands is going to return a result, and this one's interesting. See how this result only has one trait? It just has the it just has the success. It doesn't have the error, and that's because we're importing the result from anyhow. So anyhow adds a new result type that shadows basically the one from standard. It doesn't shadow it at all. It just means that you can refer to anyhow result instead of wherever standard result lives. I actually don't know where it lives because it's always included, but it just provides an anyhow result. And what that does is it makes the error type by default, I believe, this context, or maybe something that context can go into. I'm not positive. And so basically how you use it though is you can just say result of the success and you can leave off the error, and that's the whole anyhow just lets you return any error and just report on it kind of style. And so what we say is, instead of doing an expect, which is basically like an unwrap with a message, what we do is a context, which keeps the error, and then we return it with question mark through the result. So more getting rid of panics and returning errors instead, but doing it through anyhow instead of having specific error enums with this error. So same thing, context and question mark instead of expect. Same with these, and like Steve was saying, we changed the error messages to just make a little more sense with any error, not just that the creation could fail, because it could be any IO related error here. So problem fetching current directory, cache folder creation failed, node modules folder creation failed. And then we need to return our result type at the end. Since we've been using the question mark to unwrap it, we need to return the OK of the empty tuple. And then the only change here now is that main, before it didn't return anything, but now it returns a result of the empty tuple. And what's kind of interesting is that's actually already the return type of this block on, so no other changes were needed, which is kind of interesting. So yeah. And then what's cool here is if main returns a result like this, anyhow prints the error nicely if main were to return an error. Which is nifty. You don't have to deal with the printing into standard out on your own. I like anyhow a lot. I actually use might, which is a extension of anyhow, or a fork of it or something, but it's very, very similar. Oh, okay, cool. And then this is gonna just completely get rid of the main that we, not completely get rid of it, just make it a lot less code. Use the macro. So we add some features to Tokyo. We add the runtime feature and the macros feature. And then well, those are not, that's a different thing. But that's okay. Okay, here's the commit that goes with this message. So this was doing current thread was the builder style, and then it, just enabled all the things, actually enabled all the features maybe, I'm not actually even sure what that means. And then you build the builder, unwrap it, and then call block on. But you can replace that with this Tokyo main macro, which is what I usually do, right? Which just, I think, basically makes it so it's doing the block on with this call, and then your main can be an async function, and you don't have to, you can call await and all kinds of normal things on it, which is nicer. And the flavor of current thread here could also be this current thread can be like, you can specify multi-thread, and then I think there's other things of specifying how many threads you want in your thread pool and different things like that. This conversation is about Anonrig, the author of the repo, said, I read that macros increase the compilation time of Rust and should be avoided, ? If yes, is this change worth the increase? How can I benchmark track? The message, macros compiler slow, probably came from me. One-off macros are fine. It is the super repetitive, less tuned macros that cause trouble. Macros increase the compilation time. This is true in the sense that they generate code, and the more code that exists, the more time it takes to compile. And they should be avoided. This is a bit strong. Every single derive is a macro, for example. They are borderline impossible to truly avoid. If yes, is this change worth the increase? The amount of code generated by the macro is the code you'd write by hand. The increase you end up with here should be imperceptible. How can I benchmark track? One way to decide is to run some builds, then apply this diff, then run some builds. It's a very small diff, so that shouldn't be difficult. Basically, just like do the diff, see if it's slower. You can do the time bash command or whatever and see run a few cycles. But basically, Steve does not think that using the Tokyo macro here is going to meaningfully affect compile times, which is awesome. I think the one thing that isn't mentioned here really is that, like, yes, the more code that exists, the more code that it takes to compile, but this Tokyo main is running Rust code to generate the other Rust code. So there is, like, that step. There is Rust code running, and it, like, could take forever. It doesn't have to, but that is a step that like felt like it was glossed over a tiny bit. And then what's this other diff? I think this is clap stuff. So apparently they were building their clap stuff by hand, which I've never done before, but that's pretty awesome. Yeah, so I've always built the CLI with the derives like this. But this is the old way. So you could, like, say there was command, give it a binary name, a version, author, arguments required. Yeah, awesome. Cool. I really didn't know. I've never seen this style, so it's really fun for me to see the non-derived style. But this is what I would be more used to too. So, like, your CLI derives parser from clap, and then you say, like, you give it some information about the command. The author, version, and about are taken from your cargo file. And then the long about we set to none. We just get rid of the long about here. So I like this. You could set up like a sub command. It's either a init or add. Add takes some args. There's a short and a long name for it. So it's doing the same thing that was going on here, but in the declarative derive macros. And then just uses it slightly differently. We unwrap the enums and stuff, but I don't think the usages are too different. So yeah, cool. Opus says, I think I die without Rust macros. Writing C, C++, and then using a preprocessor that really feels horrid, and it's not that powerful. Yeah, I do love Rust macros. I've started writing like some like, I enjoy writing them too. It's really fun just to like have that. I output Rust code and can do kind of whatever you want in their step. Obviously, getting crazy with macros isn't always the best, but I do love them. I don't actually have much experience with C and C++, and the preprocessor to know that pain. I've read about it, and so I know the pain from afar, but I've never experienced it up close and personal. So I do like that macros feel like they have a little bit more guardrails than that, but I'm not positive how true that really is. Hey, Zachary Laws, thanks for stopping by and chatting. Any tips for a beginner writing C++? Should I just switch to JS? Well, like I just said a few seconds ago, I don't have much experience with C or C++. So if you wanna do C or C++ in your case, I might not be the best person to ask, but I'll try my best. My first follow-up question though is, what do you want to write? What do you want to write, Zachary? I feel like programming languages, how do I want to say what I want to say? Programming languages are tools, and there are tools that are better for certain jobs than others, right? And so the comparison of C++ and JS is a little bit interesting to me because they often live in different spheres, right? Like, I think of C++, knocking my mic. I think of C++ more for like things that are going to run right on my machine, maybe like a game C++ or desktop apps. I don't know, something a little more lower level, if you understand what I mean by that. Where JS, like, is going to run in the browser, so it's very web based. You can write servers with Node and stuff now in JS, but maybe you wouldn't want to write like a really graphically powerful game in JavaScript, for instance. So what are you trying to write? And maybe we can chat about the pros and cons of different languages. most likely some websites and servers or some data science related fields. And then, okay, I'll come back to you in just a second. Oh, this looks like you're talking about Rust macros. Awesome. So Zachary, if you're looking for doing some websites and servers or some data science stuff, I might say I would probably not recommend C++. Are you, do you have programming experience in general in other languages? Just curious where you're at. You can do those in C++ for sure. I'm not sure they would be my first choice. For website servers and data science, very rudimentary. Awesome. Yeah, so I might go with JS would be fine. But especially for data science stuff, I might look into Python. Python's got really good web server support. Like there's Django is one of the big frameworks if you want like the all-in-one web frameworks. There's smaller ones like Flask that are really good for that. And Python's really where like all of the data science stuff happens. There's definitely other languages and there's, you know, more specialized data science languages, but Python is like the big one for data science. And is also really good at the web server stuff. So I would personally probably look into Python as a language that I think would hit both those use cases really well. And I think it's a little easier to learn than C++. I think C++ requires a bit more understanding of like the low level things. Like you deal with things like how the file system works and how your operating system works and how the packages link together a lot more. Like there's just more things you have to be aware of, I feel like, in C++. And Python papers over some of those. It abstracts over a lot of those details and is a little easier to get started in. If you want to explore some stuff, you know, maybe you'll make it to C++ or Rust like we're looking at today eventually. But I would say maybe Python is a good place to get started. And it looks like Opus Bopus was saying some of the same things about Python and data science. So yeah, if you have any more questions or thoughts, Zach, would love to chat and answer them. But I'll hop back to Opus Bopus's message about writing Rust macros. I think the only annoying thing about writing Rust macros, at least derived macros, is the lack of documentation on how to do specific things with sign. I didn't have much trouble with it, but I'm also familiar with a lot of lower level concepts that some people might not be. Yeah, I do think the documentation of those things is a little lacking. And this time I had a better time, but I feel like last time I tried to do this, and it maybe was just because of the timing of when I tried to do it. There's sign and then there's sign 2. And I got it. I understood the difference a lot better this time around, like maybe a month or two ago when I was doing it versus a year and a half ago. But that distinction was weird, and I'll try to comment on it quickly since I mentioned it. Sign comes with the compiler, and sign 2 is released as a crate. And the best practice advice, at least at some point, and I did this a few months ago and it worked out reasonably, is you do sign that's what you use directly in the macros, in the proc macro, and because that's the interface that the compiler understands. But then what you can do is convert it to a sign 2 thing, which like seems to me to basically be a one-to-one conversion to some types from the crate, and then you can use those types in just like a standard Rust crate and run tests against them and stuff. And I felt like that was a lot better, but the documentation and the hurdles to get there were definitely more confusing than I felt like they needed to be. So no, totally agree with you there, Opus Bopus. There's definitely some speed bumps to maybe be ironed out over there at some point, but yeah, I don't know, I think that's the end of my thought. What's your follow-up thing here though? I've been writing C++ for some years, and it's actually the programming language I've written the most code in by far because I'm very into game hacking, and certain small things I forget tend to be really annoying sometimes still. I forget tend to be really annoying. Oh yeah, that's fair. That makes sense. Yeah, I do think for games and stuff, C++ makes a lot of sense. I come, just from the website of for different backgrounds, so I haven't done much C++, and now that I like Rust so much, I don't feel like I have a real big need to learn C++, especially because I'm not as much into, like you said, game hacking or like decompiling and stuff like that, where I would be integrating with existing C or C++ stuff as much. I usually I like building things from scratch in Rust because when I'm doing it, it's for my free time and I can. So just different things, different sides to come at it from. Cool. We looked at this clap and Tokyo commit, so I think let's move on. And we rework some of these errors slightly. Awesome. Okay, so this, in my mind, is some slightly better error handling. Instead of erasing everything to a string, you're actually holding on to the various error types. This would allow your users to handle errors in a more granular way if they wanted. I struggled a bit for naming here. Network I/O is still I/O, so these feel a bit redundant. However, I suspect separating these two does make sense in some sense, as what you do to fix them is different, and merging them into one grand I/O error is actually a huge hassle and not helpful for users. So I kept it this way. It's up to taste though, really. So yeah, the big thing here is instead of doing the strings and holding on to those, we hold on to these different actual error types. So network holds on to the request error, and this I/O one holds on to standard I/O error. And so that actually folds this current directory error into this file system error. And now we actually get away from the problem that I was talking about before with this from, right? Before, the from for the standard I/O error was mapped directly to current directory, when it could have been all different kinds of file system errors, really. But we fixed that here. Now we're mapping the general I/O error to a general I/O error in our error. So it's a specific I/O variant of our registry error enum. So this just makes more sense, right? We're mapping from general to general, not from general to specific. And so let's see. Oh, and then we add another from, so we can go directly from a network request error into a registry error. The same thing. We just take that value in and return our variant. So I think this is just going to be making some of these code paths a bit nicer. Yeah. So now, since we can do this into network registry error, instead of having to manually do this or at the call site that like says, oh, I'm a network error, and I pull out the string, I can just, we can just use question mark now. It'll use the from, it'll give us a network error, and everything will be nice. And I think actually what's kind of nice here is these network errors. Yeah, before these network errors actually were just using the package URL as the string. So it wasn't even the full error here, it's just the URL of the package that was erroring. But now it'll actually contain the error object, which will say what went wrong. So like, did it time out? Did they respond? Did they just close the pipe? Well, what actually happened? And then the serialization error. Oh, it must also just be a request error. So the network request error probably also contains the JSON couldn't decode. So I'm actually wondering, oh, serialization failed, not deserialization failed. So yeah, that might be why it's not this type. No, it was serialization there. I'm actually wondering if serialization variant's used anymore. Because it's not mapped to here, I doubt. Because there's no from for serialization, so I don't think it is. So cool, that's this commit. Back to chat. Opens like recently someone had a memory corruption issue and I was confused for a while. Realized later it was because they were inserting into a vector while using the iterator. Unless you're preemptively allocated more space to the vector, when you push back, it causes reallocation and invalidates the iterator, corrupting the data you're referencing it from. Changing from standard vector to standard list fixes the problem because they handle memory very differently. Oh, that's interesting. So the first message makes sense to me, right? Like that's the concurrent access and mutation problem that Rust solves, even if heavy-handedly, with the borrow checker, right? If you have a mutable reference and can change something, you can't also have a read-only reference elsewhere. And while that can be frustrating in some use cases, I think it clears up that problem, which is kind of interesting. But then changing from a standard vector to a standard list fixes things. That's interesting. I don't know enough about memory representations to dig into that too much, but do you know what's going on there? What is, like, what's a list different than a vector in that sense, and why can it handle that? Is a list more like a linked list? And so inserting something in the linked list just changes that one pointer? and it's just fine that way. That's my best guess. And it's just like all over in memory, but that doesn't matter. It's maybe just not a continuous block of memory like a vector would be. That's my best guess. Cool. I like errors reworking though. Cool. This one's easy. Self.getLatest tag. I think if we were to like look at the method. Oh, it's not gonna let me. Let's see if I can do that in my editor. Nice. So if we look at this getLatestTag method, it looks at this dist tags hash map and looks for latest. And so the diff here is just, instead of calling that 2 times, pull it out into a variable and refer to it. In a hash map grab, I don't know, like it matters. You can definitely pull it out and do it once. But in general, I'm not sure that is the biggest deal. I come from Ruby. I would never consider a hash lookup slow in Ruby, but we're in Rust now, so different ball games. Nice and easy one. That's not a really Rust specific thing necessarily either. Remove the unneeded allocation. We don't need an owned version for the call to this method. So in get tarball URL, we did get latest version, and then we called toOwned on it so that we could get the dist tarball as string. But we don't need the owned version here, so we can just save a clone, save an allocation, and just use the referenced. Since we're returning a reference, it's fine to stay referencey the whole way through, basically. Flippy suggestion. Non-exhaustive enum. Given that you're exporting this enum, you have a choice to make. 1. Never add another variant unless you want to increase your semver major version. Make it non-exhaustive. The latter is a good idea for errors generally. Yeah, so this is an interesting one. So let's take a detour. Cargo semver checks is a really cool project that I've been reading about, and I actually saw a talk given by the author recently. And it's really cool. Basically, things like this that are mentioned, if you add a variant to an enum, it's technically a Rust breaking change. Because if someone has a match on this enum, and they've listed out all the variants that exist, if you add another variant, their code's going to stop compiling because now they have an unhandled variant. And that makes it a breaking change according to Rust. Cargo semver check is a really cool thing that basically will look at your code base and it'll look at like the diff between what the old version that was released and the current version you're about to release, and see if you've broken semver, see even if you've made one of these breaking changes on accident. So hopefully if you were running cargo semver check and you had a enum that did not have this non-exhaustive, so if you had an enum like this that you were exporting, and you did add a field to it, you would at least get a warning or an error / warning being like, hey, don't do that. You're about to break semver. Did you mean to? But the better alternative here is to stay, well, maybe, right? An alternative, and I do think it's better in this case, is to stay out of area 1 completely and make it non-exhaustive. And what that means is that when someone uses this tarball error in a match statement, they won't be able to just list network and file system. They'll be forced to add an underscore non-exhaustive pattern match, or not use the match at all, right? You either have to expect there to be other variants added in the future, or your code won't compile. And that way, if you add more variants, other code had to have been written expecting there to be some other errors and handle them in some way, so it's not a breaking change, according to semver. And for errors like this, you probably want to give yourself the option to add other variants to this error enum. Maybe there's another reason tarballs will error in the future. And so it's usually good to mark those as non-exhaustive. Okay. Chat break. Opus Bopus about vector and list. So standard vector is essentially a light wrapper over a regular array, so the memory is right next to each other, and you can do things like random access. That makes sense. So vector is a continuous block of memory, basically an array. List just uses heap memory, so it's really good for storing large amounts because you don't have to reallocate for inserting an item or whatnot, but you can't get a regular array from it and do random access, which is the downside. Yeah, okay. So list sounds like it's maybe not exactly a linked list, but reminiscent of a linked list, right? Things are on the heap, they point to the next object. You can put something in the middle by changing the pointer direction, something, something, something. That makes sense. And you don't get the regular array access because like it's just slow, right? Like to get to the fifth element, you gotta hop around to find it. Kind of. That makes sense to me. Cool. Another opportunity to use format strings directly. Oh yeah, we're taking some strings and we're adding them together. Just throw it in a format string, especially with the named things. Much easier to see that this is gonna look like name at version instead of this string plusification going on. Okay. Or to or else. So because we do have some work, oh yeah, okay. So because we do have some work in the conversion of these error messages, technically this way is slightly more efficient. You see, with or, we unconditionally also run the generate error code. But with or else, we only invoke that code if we actually hit the error here. So in effect, doing this moves the allocation to the error path only, which is nice. Yeah. So what that means here is that to do this or, right, before we even call the or function, we have to evaluate the parameters to it, which in this case is this error. So no matter what, before the code is even running the or method, we have to evaluate this error, and that's it unconditionally runs the generate error code. It always is going to make this tarball error, network error while downloading file, and it's going to make this man, what was the word that I liked for it? Source code string. It's not the one I wanted, but that's okay. The source code string into an own string. So that allocation is going to happen no matter what. And then the or function is going to decide, okay, do I want to return what's an item, or did I want to return my argument? But what we want here, or what we're gonna get out of this or else, is instead of the argument to or else being the actual error, it's a closure, and I actually don't even know what it passes. It probably passes the item, the self, but we're ignoring it here. Yeah, that's definitely the case. But it takes a closure that returns the actual error. So now the error isn't actually, like, this allocation, this string is never created. We never do the toOwned unless we're in the failure case. And so if you're doing things that allocate, calling toOwned, it's usually better to use the or else variants with the proc. There's a better word for this. It doesn't say. It's okay. You take in a I don't know. Well, I'll take a break from not knowing the right words. Closure. Found it. Found the word I needed. Just needed to pretend to stop it. So we take a closure instead for or else instead of the value to save our allocation here. But my break was going to be, thank you for the follow, VGS Studio. Thanks for hanging out. I hope you are enjoying it and hopefully learning something. And if you're not learning something, let me know. Let me know why not. Hey, how's it going? Thanks for the chat. Always fun to see people stopping by and love to chat with people. So thanks for stopping by. Okay, so that was or to or else. I like that change. Save us an allocation in the happy path. And then we're going to change it again. Love it. Turns out that now that we're using or else, Clippy recognizes that there's a better method on result map error for this task. So or else is fine, right? It does the job here. But or else will let you return anything you want, right? Your return type can be anything. Ours happens to be a result type, so we have to wrap it in the error variant explicitly. But it doesn't have to be, so or else doesn't enforce that at all. But since item is a result, there's a map error function, which is a lot more like what we want. So map error says, take the error, if we are in error, take it, apply this closure to it, apply this map operation to it, and return that instead. So now we don't have to deal with wrapping it in the error variant manually. Now we can just say map error, and we're returning the inner error, so the tarball error of type network or of file system. Just a little more clear what we're doing. We're operating on the error and still returning an error. So not actually changing the function of the code, just maybe more clarity. What am I doing? That's a great question. Thanks for asking, because I should have said that when new people hopped in. So I'm taking a look at this PR, if you haven't noticed yet. So let's open this one in a new tab. So the general idea here is that the author, a non-rig, is a Node.js and OpenJS developer, but is starting out Rust and wanting to learn more Rust. So they are working on a side project just to build a package manager in Rust. A Node.js package manager, just more to learn than to actually, like, try to make a NPM competitor. And Steve Klabnick is a Rust person who's been involved in Rust for a long time. And he found the PR on Twitter, I think, and they had some back and forth, and he sent this awesome PR with 23 commits of detailed feedback and why the changes were made. Not just the change, but why it's better Rust, or why it's more idiomatic Rust. So we are taking a look at that PR, and we're hopping commit by commit, and we are at which one? Or else and map error. So we made it. We're here. So we're getting pretty close. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to go, and we'll make it through. And then maybe we'll just take out the repo, check out the repo in general, and poke around. But so we've been hopping commit by commit through, and we've learned a lot, right? Like, this has been a really good, like, Steve has done a really good job here. This is an awesome PR, an awesome learning resource, and it's been really fun walking through it. And wow, that looks cool. I've never used Rust. I like Rust a lot. Rust is by far my favorite programming language at the moment. I don't use it. I'm a Ruby web developer professionally, but Rust is pretty much all I write in my free time now, which is still quite a bit of coding. I just like it. It's a lot of fun. What do you do at the moment? VGS Studio? Just curious if you're willing to share. If not, that's fine too, though. So yeah, we're gonna hop back into it. How I've been doing it is I've been going to commit, and then I've been hopping over and taking a chat break. So feel free to drop some messages, and I will get to them after this one commit. Cool. Unwrap instead of let with an underscore. I really prefer using at least unwrap here. If this never happens, they're equivalent. If it does happen with the old code, you silently continue. With the new code, you blow up. Yeah, I like this unwrap better, but I think this description, I want to explain just a tiny bit more. So when you have so unpack here is a function that returns a result in Rust. And results have this special attribute added to them, and it's like not special that you can't add it to your own code. You can do it. It's just not the most commonly used. It's the must use attribute in Rust. Oh, it's nightly only. Okay, so you apparently can't use it. Oh, never mind. You can use the must use attribute. Yeah. This isn't nightly only. Just the thing I was looking at is So results have this must use attribute, which you can use on other things. But what that does is that if you just did, I can't cover up the things on screen. I can copy and paste into an editor though. So if you just had this line of code, right, where unpack returns the result, Rust is going to get mad at you and say that you have to use that result, because a result is either the correct value you wanted or the error. And so Rust is like, hey, you might have an error there. You need to use this result in some way. One way to use the result is to set it equal to a variable. Let a equals, or let result, whatever, that then satisfies the compiler. It says, okay, cool, the thing's used, I'm happy. The kind of trick though that you can use if you want to get around that must use is you can let it to underscore, which is Rust for like a variable I don't want to name. And then that's the same, right? It still says, okay, you're still using it. You made it a variable. That's fine. But if this unpack failed, and this is the error variant, we'll just have made this variable and the code keeps running, right? And that probably isn't what we want, depending on the use case. Maybe we want to like handle the error. But what Steve is saying here is that if we aren't going to handle the error, if we were already going to ignore it, it's probably better to unwrap it so that in the error case, the whole thing blows up, instead of silently continuing. Because like the next thing that we do is we remove the tarball, but if it didn't unpack successfully, we might not want to delete it yet, and things like that. So yeah, don't completely ignore errors. We'd rather at least unwrap them and panic the whole program. Even better might be to return the error to the callers through results. but one step at a time. How long have I been using Rust? I've been using Rust on and off for, oh man, call it, let's find out. The first thing that I really did in Rust is this project, dev icon lookup, which says I started it about 5 years ago. So this was the first project I ever did in Rust, November 15th, 2018. Oh, that's fun. I started this on my birthday in 2018, November 15th. Barely though, it was almost midnight. It was almost not my birthday anymore. So this was my first one. So I've been doing Rust for about 5 years. This is a tool that like adds these little dev icons based on the file type to things before it. So like if you have Rust code, it adds the little Rust icon. I used to use these in Vim a lot, so that's what this was for. But this was my first project in Rust. So 5 years ago or so, I've been using Rust in various degrees. Yeah, happy birthday to initial commit, Corey, from this repo. I'll take a chance though to plug this other thing. This is how I've been doing a lot more Rust in recent years. So I found out about this game Battlesnake. Let's call it about 2.5 or 3 years ago now. And how it works is you write a web server that powers one of these snakes. So every one of these turns, every time a snake is moving on this little animated board, a web request is being sent to a server, and you respond with which direction you want your snake to go. And you only have 500 milliseconds to make that choice. So I've used Rust to build my web server for this game, and that's how I've like gotten a lot better at Rust, and that's my now biggest Rust code base, and where I think I've learned a lot of my Rust from. So yeah, that's my just a little quick detour into my Rust experience. You came here, did you come here to ask about Battlesnake, or did you come here to ask about Rust? Because well, either way, you're in the right spot. I will answer any of your Battlesnake and most of your Rust questions. Battlesnake, yeah. Well, what do you want to know about Battlesnake? I usually do Battlesnake streams on Sundays, but I really wanted to walk through this PR because I thought it was a fun thing to do. So that's why we're here today. But we'll be back with Battlesnake content on stream, likely next Sunday. But we'll see how the stars align. Awesome. Did you enter a snake last week? Are you on any of the leaderboards? How's it going? I haven't been checking in. I need to actually like look at my snakes. I've been doing some Battlesnake adjacent stuff for a long time, but I haven't like worked on my actual snakes in a bit. I should do that sometime soon. You keep asking about Battlesnake in chat, and we'll get back to it in a sec. I'm just gonna go to the next commit in the meantime. What are we doing here? Oh, we had some more ores. We're gonna make a map errors. Oh, and we're also doing the thing where instead of holding strings, we hold on to the error types. So we add the froms, and then we do map error with the question mark. Ooh, I like this trick. This is a cool trick. So map error takes something that can be called with one argument. And it turns out a struct constructor, or a variant constructor in this case, of something that just takes one argument is something that that is callable by map error. So let me just write this because I think it might be a little more illuminating. So this is equivalent to this, right? Oops, where you have like an E. Yeah, E is a better one. Well, no, not network. That's a different thing, GitHub. There we go. These two are equivalent. But it's kind of nice that you don't have to write out the closure explicitly for this, like in the second version. You can just do this first version. Just a neat little trick. Oh, awesome. VGS Studios. You use some of my snakes to test yours. That's awesome. Which ones were you testing against? Just curious. Which ones were you, or how about this? Which ones were, like, was there one you were about the same, like, was there one you felt like was a good competition, or you were able to beat consistently, or, where are you feeling? 108th in standard. Let's go check out the leaderboards. I don't even know how big they are at the moment. Oh, let's sign in. I like having my things highlighted. Come on. There we go. Okay. You said standard leaderboard. Oh, okay, so 108th on the standard leaderboard. That's like not that far from where Improbable Irene is right now. 108. So you... Oh, there you go. VGS Studios. Love it. From Brazil. Awesome. Yeah, that's like 380, and you haven't been in here that long. We don't have those... We don't have that graph anymore that I was looking for. Let's see. What's the... Yeah, you're still gaining more than you're losing for most losses. So you still could be going up a bit too, for sure. That's awesome. Here, let's check out one of the wins. It's always fun. Sorry if you were here for Rust stuff. Sorry for the quick Battlesnake diversion. We'll just watch a game or two and I'll get back to it, I promise. Okay, so VGS Studio, Issa Pisa is the name of the snake in the bottom right corner here. Let's check it out. Okay. Oh, there we go. Oh, wow. That was a quick game. Maybe we'll watch another. That was a good win, but a little bit quick. We got the two snakes colliding in the middle, going after that food, with the same size head-to-head. And then down in this corner here, though, you got the size advantage there, VGS Studio, and get the win there. So nice job on the quick game. Let's see if we can find one that's like... Oh, here we go. Oh, is this the turns? Turns, perfect. Let's look for a good long game. This will be more exciting. Looks like it was about the same. We see Kaiser again. Shmake might have been in the last one, and Super Rocket Snake. Let's watch this game. It's always fun to see the long ones. So you got the size at 4. Oh, okay, so we get to go duels for most of it here. This is fun. I think duels are the easiest to watch and understand. So Super Rocket Snake's got the size advantage here at 10. And so you're gonna stay small here. It sounds like VGS Studio. Is that a strategy or just what's happening in this game? Watching one game's a little hard to say if that's on purpose. Getting bigger now, so I'm gonna go with not. Ooh, got a little lucky there. Super Rocket Snake had the win if they pushed you against the wall there. Super dangerous. Being stuck against those walls, really a tough spot to be in. But got out of it okay. Still under half the length, so not... oh, there we... Is this it? Ooh, it was close, but Super Rocket Snake got out of that hole as well. This has been a pretty close game, which the size difference doesn't really show, which is always so interesting. And... oh, there we go. Oh no, that's unfortunate. You got the win, so congrats, not taking it away from you at all. But always unfortunate when it ends on a timeout there. Super Rocket Snake looked like they were throwing some timeouts here, but it was a few in a row, and I wonder why. I wonder if they thought they were stuck and couldn't get out or something and were erroring, but we'll never know. But good win, good win. Oh, you're making a championship in your college group and you talked to Brad about it. That's awesome. Nice. I'll go through and check out those discords. I might have missed those ones, but that's really fun. I love when we get like, you know, college groups and other competition groups like that. It's a lot of fun. Are you're planning on doing like one of the tournament styles for that? Yeah, one of the tournaments. Those are really fun. Cool. Well, I'm gonna hop back to some Rust stuff, and maybe we'll end up on Battlesnake at the end of stream again. Okay, so we were doing some more math error stuff. We took a second to talk about the struct constructor, for lack of a better word. But most of these are pretty easy. We're just gonna make the map error and just get rid of the string processing. Yeah, nice and relatively easy on this commit. Oh, never bothering me with Battlesnake at all. I love talking about Battlesnake, so I would talk about Battlesnake as long forever. So don't apologize at all. Okay, cool. Remove unneeded conversion now that we're implementing from this isn't needed. Nice catch. Oh, cool. This sounds like it was one that Steve probably missed and Anon-Rig brought up. So since this IO error, let's see if we can go back to it. Is this where it is? Yeah, okay, awesome. So now that we wrote that the IO error can be converted into a tarball error, you can go from an IO error into a tarball error. We don't need to do it manually, because when you use the question mark, it automatically calls... I don't want to say something that's a lie, but it's okay. I'm gonna say something, and hopefully it's close enough to the truth. It calls into on the error to convert it from whatever it is into the error that it needs to be. And since we have the from implementation, we automatically implement into as well. So the conversion happens. Basically, it's just doing this exact map error for us. Yay, let's code. Back to chat. Opus Bopus says, I am back with food. I actually recently looked into Battlesnake. Seems really, really interesting. Something I personally wouldn't care for, I don't think, but it's definitely a really interesting game concept. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I love it, and I like that you can love it and think it's interesting, but acknowledge it's not for you. I just think that's really awesome, and I agree, right? It's not for everyone. I know lots of people who just, you know, it's not for them, but I do think it's a really interesting concept, and I've had a lot of fun with it. We've introduced different kinds of game modes. Like right now, I don't think we have any, but a year or so ago, we introduced the wrapped game mode where you go off one side and you wrap around the other, which kind of was a really fun one. Opened up some new strategies and stuff. And I'm actually, here I can plug this really quick. I actually have a RustConf talk coming up in September, where I'm talking about Battlesnake and Rust, and all of that. Let's see if I can find my little headshot. Yeah, there we go. Using Rust and Battlesnake to never stop learning. So in this talk, I'm just gonna be talking about my adventures of Rust and Battlesnake and how I really love Battlesnake because it's allowed me to learn lots of new things with Rust. Because I came from the Ruby side of things, so Rust is really low level for me. And I get to learn things like memory representations and about threads more and flame graphs and just learned about all these different concepts that were way lower level than the Ruby that I was used to. And so I have this RustConf talk coming up in September. It's pretty in the morning on the first day here, which I'm excited for. I get to get my talk done with and enjoy the conference. So yeah, I'm excited for that and felt like a good detour to plug that. Okay, back to some chats here. VGS Studio says, later, can I ask you something about ML and the Battlesnake CLI? Yeah, of course. I think we've got 4 commits to get through here, and then we'll chat about Battlesnake some more, if that sounds okay with you. And yeah, I'm really excited for the RustConf talk. I've gotten started on my presentation and everything, and I do need to work on it more for sure. But I'm really excited for it. It'll be my first conference talk, and it'll be my first in-person conference that I'm attending. So I'm excited. A little nervous, but I'm excited. Doing these streams helps because, you know, I get more used to this. Cool. Awesome. Okay, so actually we mentioned this earlier, and I only really mentioned it earlier because I had seen some of these. I bet it was from We Hanglow. This was in a comment on the top level. So we had been writing these from implementations from standard IO error into registry error and doing this manually. But this error derive that we have here actually makes it easier. So since we are holding on to this request error, we can just add the from attribute, and now it says, okay, it writes, which one? This is the request error. Yeah, so it writes basically literally exactly this impl for us. So all we need to do is add the from attribute, and we get this for free. So we use that here, and we use it here. And as you can see, no usages need to be changed because it's generating identical code or near identical code, which is awesome. And back to chat. I think a very cool challenge for a large group of people would be for teacher to teach or whatever to make a snake and have students optimize the code. Not improve the snake, but make the code as fast as they can. Of course, the teacher should on purpose unoptimize the code, but it would be really neat. Optimization is a thing that I found not a lot of people are good at, and it's such a great thing to learn. And for people who already know how to optimize code, well, they can pull out so many weird tricks that it'd still be fun for those people to see. Yeah, no, I think that would be a lot of fun. I like that. I hadn't thought about that explicitly, just the optimization part. I do think that's would be a fun thing. And that you're right, there's so many weird tricks, and that's just some of the stuff that I've really enjoyed learning. It's come up on the Battlesnake Discord a few times about this is something I haven't tried yet, but I want to, and it might make it into the end of my talk, but bit boards and using shifts and masks instead of array operations and stuff, and just the different representations of a board that you can do some operations faster. It's just a whole different world, and it would be really cool to like just work on the optimization side. And that's like something that I've done with my snakes for a long time, right? Like I'll go in cycles, right? Like I'll work on the logic of the snake for a while, but then I'll just go on an optimization kick where like I stop changing logic for months, right? And I just try to squeeze out any performance I can. I didn't really know if that was relevant. That wasn't super duper relevant, but felt related. So no, I do think an optimization kind of challenge like that would be really fun. And you can always have that one person who would inline ASM2 or has the weird solution. You're that one person. You're gonna write some assembly inline in our Rust code and sneak out some performance that way. I like it. I like it. Yeah, I'm just chatting now and thinking about my presentation. This simmed is also something that I will definitely make it into my talk because I tried that and I need to give it another shot. I was able to get simmed working, just not faster for my snake. So that's an optimization that I haven't pulled off yet for my snake. And there's a good chance my snake just isn't like the operations I was trying to use simmed for maybe weren't simmed friendly. Like I might have just been holding it wrong. But that'll be a fun one to talk about because it's one that hasn't paid off yet. We're just not using Rayon. Remove it. Nice and easy. Oh, and that's the last commit. We did it. We did it. So this was I want to talk about snakes and optimizations again, but I want to finish this off with this PR. So let's just do a little outro. This was a lot of fun. Thank you, Steve Klabnick, for putting this PR together, and to Nonrig for getting the repo put up and giving a place for all this to happen. I had a lot of fun walking through this and seeing the code changes, talking about the suggestions. And so I'm really happy that we had the chance to do that today. We talked about a lot of things. We learned about different type conversions. We talked about references. This one I want to make like a whole post on just because I need to understand it enough to explain it better. At str versus at string. We talked about macros. We did all kinds of fun stuff today. This was a really fun PR. So yeah, again, thank you, Steve, and thank you, Anonrig, for putting this repo and PR together. I had a lot of fun, and I hope everyone learned at least something coming from it, or had a good time regardless. And with that, let's get back to chat about some Battlesnake, and then probably do some wrap up. What do you think is better, AI snake or well-coded snake? Great question. I don't think there's an answer to that question, but obviously it's an opinion. I don't know. I've only written coded snakes, right? I've gone the non-AI route so far. I'm interested in doing some machine learning something snake, but I don't know much. Like I know the broad strokes of that world, but not enough to actually get started, right? So it would be a big learning project for me, which, you know, I'm not opposed to at all. I haven't tried it yet. I'd say that most of the most competitive snakes right now are hand coded, maybe with some like parameter tuning, but for the most part are handcrafted. But that isn't to say it's best. I think it's just where we're at right now. I definitely think there's a lot of room for improvement in the AI ML snakes. Like, there's definitely some people in Discord working on some training Jimmy kind of stuff right now, and I definitely think I definitely don't think that whole problem space has been explored. There's someone in chat, someone in Discord chat, sorry, 101 Donut Man, who's doing who's been doing a just ML snake that he's been really excited about, and he would love to chat with you about that if you wanted in the Discord. But I saw some of your things. No, none of mine are like AI ML in that sense of it. So let's we can pull up my list of snakes here. Click on my name, I guess. How do I get to the page that shows my snakes? Do I know the URL? Well, not if I can't type it. Wow. Okay. Um, site's also being really slow right now. But no. So my snakes aren't AI. Here we go. Let's get to a page, and then I can find myself from there. So my first snake that I made, like my actual first snake, was Amphibious Arthur. And then I've been following this naming convention. So Amphibious Arthur was my first snake, and was kind of like a, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just gonna throw some code at a wall and see what sticks. And I had a lot of fun with it, right? Like I didn't know, just trying things, all the code is public. Let's see. GitHub, Corey, JA, Battle, Snake RS. You can take a look at all of my snakes code here. You can, find them. They're all named in their files. Probably do need to know a little bit of Rust to hop around, but feel free to take a look. So Amphibious Arthur was my first one. Very, very hand-coded, not following an established algorithm, just kind of trying stuff out. Then Bombastic Bob and Constant Carter, these are really test snakes that I made. So Bombastic Bob moves in a random direction each time, and Constant Carter always goes to the right. Bombastic Bob was just, I needed a sparring partner that just made really quick decisions, so a random move each time was the way to go. And Constant Carter always goes right. I used this one for testing network latency. So like if I deployed to Heroku, how long was the ping? And if I only go right, I could measure my latency really well that way. So Amphibious Arthur was my first real snake, and then Bob and Carter are like test snakes kind of for me. So reading your message here now. Like I was talking, I'm part of a college group here in Brazil about learning programming, so I made an event, a fast API with land a GitHub template for my friends, and learn more about API requests. You want to see? Oh yeah, you posted about that in the Discord, and I know what you're talking about. That Brad commented on and stuff. Yeah. Oh no, you tried to deploy it to East and couldn't play. Why not? Did it? Uh-oh, we could try to debug that and definitely help you out in Discord later for sure. But I wonder why you had problems with that deploy. But yeah, Amphibious Arthur was my first one. And then Devious Devon is my best one at the moment. Devious Devon is a min-max snake, which is a relatively well-known algorithm for these kind of turn-based games. It's also popular in chess. Lots of the battle snake programming concepts cross over with chess. So Devious Devon is min-max with alpha beta pruning. That's the big named one. And then Eric, Frank, and George, they were really for the single player challenges that are removed at the moment. Oh, and actually, I forgot. Devon might not be my best one right now. Hobbs is probably my best one right now, which is another min-max implementation, but with a different score function, with a flood fill inspired algorithm. So hovering Hobbs is probably my best one at the moment. And again, it's the min-max algorithm. And my newest one, who's in standard at the moment, is Improbable Irene. She's doing Monte Carlo tree search, which is more randomness based, like just simulating random moves. And if you simulate enough of them, you get a lot of information about the game is the idea. But not quite as good as Hobbs at the moment. So I do need to improve Irene quite a bit. Oh, just too much of a delay for the SA East one. I don't know if there is one that would be closer for you, but if you didn't know, there are these engine regions. So when you go to make a snake, you can choose which engine. And it's pretty fair that none of these look like they're gonna be super duper close to SA East 1. But if you didn't know, there are some options just to let you know. And then you were saying Hobbs. You were playing against Hobbs a lot and lost. Yes, Hobbs is probably my is definitely my most competitive snake at the moment for sure. So yeah, I like Hobbs is good. Always okay to do some losing when you're competing against some of the higher snakes. But yeah. Try out Irene sometimes. Should be open as well. You might have a much closer matched games against Improbable Irene. So yeah, That was a good little jump through that. I will click this link, but it's on my iPad, so you won't see it on stream, just to let you know. Actually, wait, can I do this? Can I copy this? Copy. Let's see if this will work. Yes, it will. There we go. Awesome. So this is... Ooh, so it is Lambda deployed. Nice. My first amphibious Arthur at the very beginning was Lambda deployed as well. I really like I liked Lambdas for that a lot. Didn't really have a reason that I moved away from them, but I'm not deploying to Lambdas anymore. I think it was just that it was more expensive to run with as much CPU and RAM as I liked. But this is awesome. I like this. I really like how you put the nice little GIF here. I like it. I like it. Let's take a quick. Oh, I can't see chat over here anymore. Oh no. There we go. Yeah, I love it. I love that it's easy to deploy. I love that you included, like, you know, going right to lambdas. I think that's just perfect. Nice. Oh, nice. You could even throw in the requests here to make it even a bit quicker to get started, right? I think if you just plug in the start, end, and move, then you could just deploy a snake. You know, if you make the move always go right or something like that, that could be a good starting point. Yeah, I know it's the template, but like if you look at some of the Battlesnake starter templates, Battlesnake starter templates, starter projects. Yeah, so we'll pick the Python one. How they start is they have the start, end, and move, and they like this one gives you a little more. Like I would, you know, maybe say you could start without quite as much logic in the starter, but give you a little place to start from. So this Python one even like has the basis of saying which move is safe and picking a safe move as its first move, which is an interesting place to get started. But yeah, that's what I was talking about then. Yeah, that's always fair. Reading the docs is always a good step, but I've found that it's not always the most common first step, unfortunately. But I totally hear you. But Opus Bopus, yeah, I'm all in on the Mac OS world at the moment. So, but I do love it, right? Like the just copying a link on my iPad and pasting it on here, like it's just super duper nice. And so I can't live without it anymore. Oh, the M2 Pro. Yeah, I would like an M2 Pro. I have the we're on my desktop, the M1 one of the one Ultra. Which one is it? Mac Studio M1 Max. But you know, which is very nice as well and very fast. But you know, I have to imagine the M2s are just that little bit nicer. Cool. So there was this one. I like your template a lot though, and I love that you have the deploy stuff ready to go, because that is always a little bit of a challenge. Oh, and it's with actions. I didn't even scroll down well enough to realize that it's all done with actions and everything with CDK. Ah, that's really nice. Yeah. I didn't scroll down enough on this README the first time. You have a really, really nice README put together. Nice job. Yeah, I like this a lot. I'm excited to see what snakes you and your fellow friends make. I'm excited. Opus says M2 isn't as big of an improvement as you'd hope for. Honestly, it's not worth upgrading if you already have an M1. Yeah, I had heard that. I had heard that it wasn't quite as exciting. You know, it's their small iteration from the M1, not the huge jump kind of iteration, which is reasonable. But yeah, I'm really happy with this machine. Oh, you're gonna do a... Oh, yeah, no, you did a great job, VGS Studios. You should be proud of this repo and README. I love it. Opus Bopus says, I'll eventually build myself a workstation desktop. You have the PC parts picker made. I just have to find time and run Linux daily, and we'll use the MacBook for work though. Yeah, that's fair. I would love to do that again. To like, you know, build a desktop and do Linuxy style. I would have a lot of fun with that. I did that you know, when I was in college, however many years ago that was nowadays. And so I did have a lot of fun with that. I actually didn't run Linux though. I was Windows back then, but that's a different story. But I would like to do that again. I'd like to do some more, you know, hooking up all the hardware stuff. It is fun. But it is a little hard to move away from the OS X ecosystem. I'm so ingrained with my copy paste between devices and all that stuff. So, VGS Studios, what exactly did you make on Battlesnake? The idea, the site, or the CLI? So I didn't make any of those things. At least in earnest. Like I didn't build all of the pieces of any of those. So Battlesnake has existed well before me. I think it actually started as an in-person event for like, you know, they did conference-y kind of competition things in person, and then in 2020 it went more online, and that's when I found it and started as a competitor, and then got more involved from there. So in 2023, there was some, you know, changes to Battlesnake, and some of the features on the site got removed. But I've worked on some. Let's see if I can probably find the PR with a GIF of this. This was a fun thing that I worked on for a while. So there's this single player maze. So they added support. So the rules repo is like where the rules of Battlesnake are, and it's open source. And so this is with the CLI, just to show how it works. But I added a single player maze mode where it generates a random maze that your snake has to solve, and then, you know, I made a snake that can solve mazes for the demo. So this was a single player version of Battlesnake that I like dreamed up, and we coded a custom game mode for. Unfortunately, it's not available in the web UI at the moment. We'd like to add it back eventually. But is not there anymore. But this is one of the things I've built. I've also worked on some of the other snail mode game mode. I think that one might be in the web UI. We ran a tournament for that in the back in the spring a bit, so that was a fun one. So yeah, I guess that's another thing to mention. More recently, this in 2023, I've been hosting some of our community tournaments where we do a live streamed tournament, picking a game mode. So we've done a few of those, and the plan is to do another one for the fall. I just haven't gotten that scheduled yet. But I would like to get one scheduled to do a fall one here in a few months, and have another one of those competitions. So this CLI is in the terminal. But I think actually if we scroll down, in the midst of me working on this PR, there was a way added to the CLI that opens the actual web browser board. So this is a different way for the CLI to render, and we can see it rendering this way for this mode. But yes, that was a terminal interface for the CLI. But you don't have to use that if you prefer the web one. The web one's definitely prettier. This GIF's funny because this is showing the end game, because in this mode, if your snake can always find the food, the thing will just go on forever, and the game server can't really handle a game that goes on forever. So after some amount of levels of the game, I implemented what I called evil mode, where as soon as you get within like within like 5 moves of the food, it just transports to a random location and you can never get it. And so I just think that's fun. I like watching this GIF. Ooh, you came here to ask how it renders to a browser. Ooh, I can chat about that quick. So, the answer is WebSockets. So when you use the CLI, well, how this game, the board works. So if we just go to board.battlesnake.com. Well, this is a bad example because I have a URL pulled in. So this is just a separate app, the engine, a board.battlesnake, and you can put in an engine URL, and it talks over WebSockets to that engine URL to get the game. So what happens when you use the CLI with the browser, with -- browser, is the CLI opens up a WebSocket server and then opens your browser to this specific URL, where engine URL here is like a localhost URL. So it's saying, okay, the engine's going to be this localhost CLI, and we're going to give it some game ID, and then it's the browser then, your local browser, is going to talk over localhost to the CLI WebSocket and stream the game that way without ever going to the external site. So it's a really cool, like, how the board is separated from the rest of the system via WebSockets is really cool because it allows you to plug in these different things like the CLI as a viewer. So it's really cool. Oh, how to render it in browser. Oh, okay, sorry. I can tell you the answer to that. It's just add the -- browser flag to the CLI, I believe. I hope it's documented. Included CLI, browser. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so it's a little bit documented. So if you add the -- browser flag, it'll open it in your browser. Fingers crossed. If it doesn't work, let us know in the Discord and we can definitely help you debug. I've seen some HTTPS issues, I think, in different browsers, but I can't remember off the top of my head which ones or which combinations. So if you have any issues, let us know in Discord and we'll happy to help. But yeah, -- browser is hopefully what you're looking for. Yes, I'm assuming your "that's so cool" message means it did what we expected it to, which is awesome. Okay, and I think with that, I am gonna wrap up stream for the day, I think. I had a lot of fun today, though. I hope everyone here did as well. I hope you learned something walking through this PR by Steve. I had a lot of fun and definitely learned a few little tricks from that. So again, thank you, Steve, and thank you, Anonrig, for putting all of that together. And so yeah, but yes, VGS Studios, please ask a parting question. I would love it. And Opus Focus says, one thing that may keep me on OS X for longer is the fact that the Z editor is OS X only right now. It's like Atom, but really, really fast. Ooh, do you like Z? I've heard about it, but I haven't tried it out. I was a Vim person for a long time, but moved to VS Code a bit ago. I mean, I like it, for sure, but I'm always interested in trying new editors or other things, so... let me know how you like Zed sometime. Do you know how to get started with ML and reinforcement using Python and Battlesnake? No, I don't, unfortunately. I'm not the person to ask about that, unfortunately, at VGS Studios, but I do know someone who is. If you're already in the Discord, so if you just like ping 101 Donut Man, or I think if you go to the Snake Dev channel probably and scroll up a bit, he was mentioning a lot of ML suggestions and reinforcement learning stuff. And I think he'd have some awesome resources for you. And more than that, he'd love to chat about ML and Battlesnake. He's been looking for some more people who want to do ML and Battlesnake for a while, it sounds like. So he would be more than happy to chat with you about it, I bet. Yeah, definitely try to get something in the tournament with your friends. That sounds awesome. Yeah, no problem, VGS Studios. I'm glad you stopped by and had some fun. I will read your message in just a sec, Opus, but I'm going to take 1 second here to plug myself as we're wrapping up. If you liked this stream and enjoyed, please head over to my blog and check it out. I've got some posts, some Battlesnakes, some not, but really what I wanted to call out on is I just started last week a newsletter. Where every Friday I'm going to send a little newsletter blob about, what I worked on this week and hopefully covering some ramblings about a topic. So this week, on July 13th, we have some updates on some stuff that I was working on, and then some ramblings on my perfect web framework. So I had a lot of fun writing this last week, and if you enjoyed this stream, I think you might enjoy my newsletter. So go check it out. Go to my CoreyJA.com, click on newsletter, or any of the pages, and scroll down to the bottom and type your email in, and you'll be all set to get my newsletter every Friday. I am going to add each post to my blog on Saturday, but if you want to get it one day early, you can drop your email. And thank you, Backward Spy. Thank you for hanging out as always, and enjoyed having you. Opus, I did kind of miss your last message, but I'm reading it now. It's really nice for the Z editor is really nice for Rust. CLion has been broken recently for Rust, so having a really fast editor that uses Rust Analyzer is nice. It's also created by the old Atom lead and tree sitter developer, which is nice backing. Oh, that is very nice. Yeah, the having it be tree sitter and Atom lead, that's just a good base for an editor to come from. I like that. I also didn't realize that Sea Lion had been broken with Rust recently. That's unfortunate. I love the IntelliJ, I love JetBrains products, so it's sad that a Sea Lion hadn't been working for a while. And yeah, I enjoyed chatting with you as well, VGS, so hopefully you can find your way by again. I'm around in the Battlesnake Discord all the time if you want to find me there. But if you want to chat about non-Battlesnake related stuff with me, you can head over to my Twitch or GitHub profiles and find a link to my Discord channel where we can chat about anything and everything. And so stop by, reach out to me if you're interested. And with that, I think I'm gonna wrap up today, team. This was a really fun stream though. Thank you everyone for stopping by. I'm gonna read these last few chats and then I'm gonna get out of here. You're already there. Awesome. Good to see you, VGS. Have a nice rest of your day too, Opus. And yeah, since we use nightly at work, we're basically forcing it back several updates because my IDE would show a bunch of errors that aren't real. Oh, is the problem basically that the Rust analyzer in JetBrains isn't the newest nightly? I've had problems with that in VS Code where like the versions of Rust analyzer aren't right. So I know that pain a little bit. Definitely nice to not have to deal with it though. Oh, get cat pooch and latte and Zed. I keep saying I'm about to close up, but I know a dev of cat poochin that might be able to help you out at least a little bit there. Paging backwards spy. Oh, Sea Lion doesn't use Rust Analyzer. Wow, that's super interesting. I just assumed that it did. I'm actually super surprised that it doesn't. It seems just like such a missed opportunity. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Even better, there's already a discussion about the Z port being tracked on the Cat Poochin discussion board. Gotta love it. And I think with that might be the perfect way to end stream. But with that said, would more than be happy to keep talking about Zed in Discord or something. I do love me my editors, but I am gonna get off stream here, everyone. Thank you for an awesome Sunday, and hopefully I see you guys around. Have a good rest of your Sunday, though, everybody. Thanks. Bye.